All right, it's Husseini. Welcome to the Husseini podcast. And we're just going to go through the last video we made about the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight being rigged. A lot of people didn't like that. A lot of people talking about how it's not a rigged fight, it's fair. They're excited. They want to see Tyson and Paul go at it. And I get it. I get it, guys. You want to see your hero, your childhood hero, Mike Tyson, the legend, go at it with this new, well, I shouldn't say new, but he only has like I think 8 or 9 fights. I don't know. I don't follow Jake Paul like that, but people want to see it. They're excited about it. I get it. But just know, and this is a fact, boxing has always been a rigged sport. Boxing has always been a rigged sport. There are a lot of sports that are rigged. I'm not saying every game, every match, every fight is rigged, it's fixed, but overwhelmingly, games have had a history of being fixed or influenced in some way or another, and boxing is no different. The most blatant example of that is, of course, the WWE. The WWE builds characters, builds storylines. That's how they sell the event. Vince McMahon is a genius, the way he built that business model. So boxing is no different. And yes, you've had some great fights. You've had some great rivalries. You've had just unimaginable entertainment. There have been those fights. But when something is so blatantly rigged, like the Jake Paul Mike Tyson fight, I just can't get hyped over it. I can't buy into it. I can't. And so look at the history of boxing in the last 20 years. It doesn't have the same draw. It does when you have a Mayweather or a Fury kind of fight, but other than that, boxing is what they say a dead sport, right? You've heard that term before. Boxing is dead. Boxing is dead. It's because they don't get the draw that they used to back in the day, back in the 80s, back in the 90s, even early 2000s. You don't get that anymore. So anything that's going to promote the sport, whether it's sanctioned or not, this fight as of today is not sanctioned. It's not an official fight. It's what they call an exhibition fight, which is really a made up class. We'll touch upon that later. But it's going to draw eyes and attention to the sport overall. Jake Paul fighting Mike Tyson, I think it is as blatant as paying Mike Tyson's managers, promoters, Mike Tyson saying, hey, take the L. Some people don't think he can take an L. They can't see that happening. I can, and I'll get into why later. But really, it's because, I don't think Mike Tyson gives a shit. I think he's going to get paid. He knows he's a legend. He knows no one's going to doubt that. Jake Paul, on the other hand, gets to fight a legend, beat him, and say, hey, look at me. I'm the best boxer ever alive. So, I'm not hating on Jake Paul, guys. I'm not hating on boxing. I'm just saying, I can't buy into it. And it's so blatant and in your face. I don't think anybody should be buying into it because you're smarter than that. You're better than that. Okay? Is it entertaining to see Mike Tyson get in a ring and throw some punches and fuck around with somebody and fight? Yes, it is. But I'm not buying the hype, and neither should you. Matter of fact, I'm going to show you a clip from Vlad, shout out to Vlad TV, Tim Donaghy, who was a referee in the NBA. Let's take a look at what he has to say refereeing NBA games, talking about how the NBA would actually influence games to go a certain direction. Okay. And look, guys, the NBA is just like any other, sport. It wants attention, it wants ticket sales, it wants a crowd, it wants a draw. And what's the best way to do that? Give the people what they want. People want to see, the Jordans, the Bryants, right? They want to see their favorite player performing at the highest level. And that's the same thing people want out of this Tyson Paul fight. Somebody did mention something about the UFC not doing that, not having to fix its fights. And the UFC doesn't have to do that. It doesn't have to rely on a storyline and character buildup because it's a brutal fucking sport. So whether they have a storyline or not, or your favorite character or not, two people are going to get in the octagon and beat the shit out of each other, and it's brutal. If you ever been to a UFC fight, it is brutal, man. So you're going to get your money's worth. You're going to be entertained either way. You know, boxing, football, baseball, especially baseball, you're not really going to get that, right? It's a slower game. You're not going to get that intensity. Well, I shouldn't say that because I love baseball. Been watching games since I was a kid. You do have some intense fucking games, but you know what I mean. But let's jump back to Tim Donaghy. I want to show you this clip of him talking about the NBA, and then I'll come back to it and talk about it. Okay, so this is Tim Donaghy, 13-year veteran referee in the NBA, talking about how the NBA pretty much influenced the referees to rig games.
This is sort of an interesting topic because, and you mentioned this, I think, on 60 Minutes. Like, at one point, well, I mean, the entire time, but specifically at certain times, the NBA was favoring Kobe. So, what kind of message would they tell the refs in terms of, make sure you call every foul, and make sure that he's always, there to shoot extra points and so forth? Like how clear was the message coming from the NBA to the refs?
It was very clear. I'll never forget when Kobe was in a playoff series with the Phoenix Suns, and I forget who the defender was, but they called him the Kobe stopper, or he referred to himself as the Kobe stopper. And they would show us video of games previously of plays that fouls weren't called, of this guy holding him or defending him too strongly, and they wanted freedom of movement because they wanted higher scoring in these games. So they would show you plays and say, this was a foul that was missed, and these three referees missed this play. Make sure you don't let this happen tonight. Make sure you call this when this happens. And that's how they would program and train the officials in the next game to have more freedom of movement and have Kobe Bryant have the ability to score more points and do well.
So pretty much what he's saying is, because the NBA wanted Kobe to flourish, they wanted exciting games for the fans who were paying to watch Kobe. They instructed the referees to let Kobe get away with more shit. That's pretty much what he's saying. And now, if this guy knows that the referees are going to be doing that for particular players in particular games, he's turning around and betting on those games. And he got busted for that. He ended up in Pensacola State Penitentiary for, I don't remember what the charges were, but he got caught gambling and I guess defrauding the NBA. So I think the biggest takeaway from Tim Donaghy's testimony, if you want to call it that, is a fixed game doesn't have to be a blatant, here's some cash, go and lose, right? There's backdoor politics. There's different influences that go into a sport that can push the result of the game either way. And that's what Tim Donaghy is getting at, is in the NBA, you have the committee. That's like the highest level executives in the NBA. It could be executives or owners really getting the referees and the playmakers on the field to do what's best for, quote unquote, the crowd, right? The fans. So Tim Donaghy's talking about, hey, we want to be favorable towards Kobe, right? Don't call the travels. Don't call the fouls. Don't, ignore this, ignore that. Do that because Kobe can go out and score 1,000 points in a game, and the crowd's going to go fucking wild and crazy and love it. And they're going to come back for more and more and more. And so and by the way, how did Tim Donaghy do that, right? He said, literally, I would ignore shit, right? I would ignore whatever it is, right? As long as it was favorable to Kobe Bryant and the fans loved it. So that is what boxing, I believe, is going through, whether the powers that be want it or not. Jake Paul has found a calling. He's found a way to gain clout on top of all the clout he already has, and it's through this medium, this sport. And so he's utilizing that to the best of his abilities. I really do think, however, that Jake Paul wants to be one of the best boxers in the world. He does have that desire. He does want that under his belt. And so he's going to do everything he can to achieve that. And that means, if that means going out and throwing fights and paying people to fight, because remember, like I covered in the first video, and again, guys, I'm not trying to hate on Jake Paul or Tyson or boxing or sports. I've got no stake in the game with either of them, either Paul or Tyson. I am, a Mike Tyson fan, if you want to call it that. I appreciate it. I respect him as a boxer, what he's done. It's always fun to watch his fights. I grew up watching Mike Tyson fights. And so, yeah, it is enjoyable to see him get in the ring at 60 years and go against a 26-year-old, Jake Paul. But it takes the fun out of it when you realize that it's all a show, right? It's like they say, for entertainment purposes only. So, do you want to see somebody go 100% and give it their all and no holds bar? Yes, but the way Jake Paul is going about his career, it's not that. Um, I'll give you an example. When Mike Tyson was coming up, watch some of Tyson's early fights. I'm talking 80s, early 90s. You could see that he just went hard. He did not give a fuck. Like, he would go into the ring and knock somebody out in less than a minute, in 30 seconds, right? That's somebody who just goes in and gets the job done. You could see that it was real, no holds barred. But with Paul, it's fixed. I don't know how else to put it. He's fighting NBA players, YouTubers, ex fighters, retirees, senior citizens now with Tyson. And I think if it was a fair fight, Tyson would beat the shit out of him. Just because he's stronger, he's bigger, he's got more technique. Again, it's not the endurance or the speed that Tyson has. Tyson has the technique, he has the knowledge. He's got Customado's brain in that head. And when you have that technique, that knowledge, it could compensate for your strength and your speed. But he is bigger than Jake Paul. So, again, Jake Paul's coming at it in a way where Jake Paul's legacy, he thinks, is going to be built and solidified, especially if he beats Tyson. He could sit there and say, I'm the best boxer in the world. Especially, guys, by the way, if they sanction this fight, they're trying to sanction this fight right now. I think the state has to approve it. But if it gets sanctioned and Jake Paul wins, Jake Paul can legitimately say, hey, I'm an official boxer. I've got an official record. And my first fight, I beat the best boxer in the world, Mike Tyson, the legend, the man, GOAT. So, again, I can't buy into it, can't buy into the hype because of the circumstances under which Jake Paul is going about his boxing career. But, you got to respect his showmanship. He is putting in the work. We all see that. But to what end? You put in all that work, you're putting all that training, go fight somebody that's worthy of that. Not somebody who's, going to let you win because you paid them off, right? So, little disappointing. Okay, so before we end this, I just want to go through one clip about Mike Tyson, Jake Paul on the PBD podcast. They're talking about what happens if Tyson wins or Paul wins. So let's take a look at that real quick.
Come down on Jake.
Yeah.
Now, if Mike wins, what's the story? Like the greatest, unbelievable Mike Tyson.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it'll really be something. I believe that was Florida on Evander, but wherever it was, I'm quite sure it was, but wherever it was, that commission took a lot of heat for allowing that to happen. Hey, you got footage. You saw this for the world. You were not without knowledge. You're experts in the space, and you should have let him fight. And this was a thing. And there was really nobody to raise up and sue or take them on. But if they would have, Evander would have, they would have lost. And I only say this to you because that will be the next part of ESPN's story. Who's sanctioning this? How many rounds is it?
So this came out about a week ago. PBD released this about a week ago. Shout out PBD podcast. They're talking about what the next topic of conversation is going to be progressing through this fight. And he's saying they're going to argue about whether this fight is sanctioned. Because remember, this is not an official fight. It's not a sanctioned fight. the boxing commission is not sanctioning this. It doesn't have a record result. So they're calling it an exhibition. Now, as of today, 7 or 8 days later after this release, that's exactly what's going on. They're talking about weight classes. They're talking about should this be sanctioned. The state has to approve on it. Like I said, if it is, then Jake Paul gets an official record after his win. This is what they're talking about right now.
Is it licensed? What weight
So
are they
spot
going to
on.
go? Mike Tyson's never fought anything but heavyweight. Jake Paul's never fought anything but 185 pounds. Most commissions will only let you move up one weight class. That would be a representative of 3 weight classes, which isn't legal unless you throw in this made-up word of exhibition.
How old was George Foreman?
And by the way,
in his
I can't
last
bang
fight?
on this too much in case ESPN's carrying it, right? Like, I got to do my job and sell it. But
No, it's Netflix.
Oh, it is
wait,
Netflix.
well,
All right.
George Foreman fought until I want to say his 50s.
Yeah, won the world title. 49.
Okay, but George Foreman.
That's another thing. So if it's Netflix, do subscribers for Netflix get the fight for free, or do they got to pay per view for the fight?
Mike Tyson, a lot of comparisons there. Big, badass dudes. I could be dead wrong. I don't see a Mike Tyson legacy, baddest man on the planet. And PBD's interviewed him multiple times. He's been on the podcast. I don't see how he can just go take an L to Jake Paul. Legacy on the line?
But
What?
out of a 30 years, his senior, like he's
Buddy.
30 years older.
Sometimes
So I actually disagree with that. I do see Mike Tyson being able to take an L because, like I said, guys, if Mike Tyson takes an L, Mike Tyson knows that you know that this fight is all bullshit anyways, right? Tyson's going to get a payday. Do I got to win? Do I got to lose? Oh, I got to lose. Okay, cool. No problem. I'll take the L. No, no big deal. I've got a 30-year history. I'm the baddest man in the ring. I mean, what is he really losing? There's no, Mike Tyson doesn't lose anything, and he doesn't really have anything to gain, like I said, besides the money. Jake Paul, on the other hand, has a ton to gain. So, I do disagree with that. I do think Mike Tyson can take an L. I could see that happening without it actually hurting his reputation. I don't think anybody, would think any less of Tyson if he were to lose to Jake Paul. And that's not putting down Paul. That's just, that's a fact. I mean, guys, again, just like think about it. Tyson is, like he said, 3 times his weight class. Okay, 30 years his veteran. Okay, the technique, the knowledge, this is exponentially on a different level. Paul is putting in the work. He's training. He's doing all the right things, but he is nowhere close to Tyson as far as technique, experience, and size, right? So, and history. Tyson has the history. Paul does not. So, if Tyson loses, I don't think it's any skin off his back.
Grandpa's got to whoop up on some kids.
I don't know, bro. The engine has to be slow. You like think about it. Right now, I get out of breath running to the bathroom here. Imagine 60 years old.
Manny, with all due respect, you're not Mike Tyson.
Thank you.
Adam, but guess what? Age is still, he's 60 years old. It's a
58. So you think
Who do you have?
And at 60 years old, he's still training harder than you. No offense. And me.
Who do you have? Who do you have
And most people.
in the fight?
I have Jake Paul, but I will tell you, I'm fascinated by the Mike Tyson story. Like, I thought he looked pretty.
Okay, so, I got Jake Paul too, but obviously for the reasons I described in this video and the previous one. I think it's going to be exciting. I think it's going to be fun to watch Tyson get in the ring and fight. But aside from that, I don't really see any, emotional investment, okay, in this fight. When I talk about emotional investment in a fight, I want everybody to look this up. Look up Marcus Maidana and Floyd Mayweather fight. Okay, this is years ago, but you had a kid from Mexico, no name. He was coming up in the ranks, but he fought Mayweather kind of out of the blue. Okay, he worked his way up, like I said, working through the ranks, gets a fight with Mayweather. That fight started off slow, but you could see that Maidana was putting in 110%. He was really going at it. He was going for the knockout. He actually landed some really good hooks on Mayweather to the point where Mayweather's stunned. Mayweather's like tripping up. So you see a fight like that and you go, damn, that's, you want the underdog to win. You could see the struggle, you could see the passion, you could see the fierceness. I mean, just check the fight out. Go on YouTube, type in Maidana versus Mayweather. This is, I don't even know how long ago. It's got to be over, maybe close to 10 years or something like that. But check it out. And when I say emotional investment in a fight, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about somebody that you could really get behind. And you know what? The hype behind that fight wasn't really, I mean, it wasn't that great. The buildup wasn't that exciting. There wasn't really any like real beef or real drama or real hype. I mean, it was the, basic shit talking, um, you know, pre-fight interview pushing and shoving and shit like that. I mean, there wasn't really much hype behind it. You go and look at what Tyson and Paul are saying to each other right now. Tyson was saying something like, I brought him into the game, now I'm going to destroy him, referencing Paul. Paul's going back and forth. Like, we didn't have that, right? And it was still a good fight between Mayweather and this kid I'm talking about. So check that out. You get an example of what a real fight looks like. And, I mean, even then people were like, oh, that fight was rigged. So I get it. There's always going to be somebody like me telling you that something's fake, something's rigged. But when it's this much in your face and you have somebody who, remember, Jake Paul is Logan Paul's brother. And at the end of the day, it's entertainment before anything, right? It's entertainment before anything. That's what the industry is ran on, right? And it's not always like that, right? There are certain professions, certain industries where it may be integrity over everything. It may be honesty over everything, transparency over everything, money over everything. I don't know, cars over everything, reviews of movies over everything. But in the Paul family, it is, at the end of the day, a show and entertainment over everything. So that's what I think about the fight. We'll keep posting videos as updates occur. The fight's in July, AT&T, Cowboy Stadium, 80,000 seats. I think probably maybe 15, 20,000 seats will sell. It's definitely not going to be sold out. But it'll be interesting to see how the Netflix subscribers get to watch it. I don't know if it's going to be pay per view or if it's included in the Netflix subscription. No idea. Like I said, I'm just not that invested in it so far. So let's keep watching. Let's see what happens. Thanks for watching me. Like, comment, subscribe. This is the Hosseini Podcast. See ya.